Well, Michael Schratt, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Great to be here.
It's fantastic to have you on. And I really like the conversation we had off air as well, where you were telling me some of your background and how you research a case as well. So just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you approach that as well.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I'm a military aerospace historian. Primary focus of my research is classified aircraft within the military industrial complex. That includes Air Force Plant 42 Palmdale, basically Lockheed Skunk Works, Black Widow Group, Northrop, McDonnell Douglas, all the major primes, just trying to figure out where our tax dollars have been disappearing the last 40 years. That's really my crusade.
How many years have you been doing that for?
Too many. 25, well over 25 years.
What got you interested in the first place? What was that kind of thrust to pull you into that world?
Living in Chicago, I was near OSHKOSH, Wisconsin. So my dad would take me to the air show every year. Been going to the OSHKOSH Air Show, which is the largest air show in the world, for like 25 years nonstop. And of course you would see the regular things, F-16, F-15, F-14. There might be a B-2 flyover, but I was more interested in what was going on behind the scenes. So that's been really kind of what I focused my attention on, in the black world, the classified aircraft that we don't hear about, something that you don't see at your local air show.
Absolutely. And where does that work fit into ufology as it is now?
Well, it's sort of an unpopular branch of ufology because a lot of these aircraft can mimic the form, fit, and function of what people are perceiving as an extraterrestrial UFO, but in point of fact, it's our own deep black programs. So you can see there's this division in ufology that a lot of people don't want to go down this path, but I feel we must go down this path because we have to explain and account for these classified aircraft before we can really break into the UFO cases. Let's get these pinned down first, then let's move there.
Yeah. And how much truth is in some of the UFO stories that are out there, that have been out there for a long time, do you think, when it comes to the balance of your work versus them?
Personally, I think 95% of what people are reporting as an ET craft are in point of fact our own deep black programs, as much as 95%. So there could be a 5% core of reality, but just looking at what we've seen here the last 25 years, a lot of it is our own technology.
So where do you think the current state then of ufology is right now, in your opinion?
In one sense, it's in disarray like it's always been, but in the other sense, some of the aircraft have been declassified, but according to Ben Rich, we've got things that are 50 years beyond what you could even comprehend. So all of those aircraft, all those aerospace assets have never even been described, declassified. They've not been dislodged from the iceberg of this research. And that's what I think needs to be focused on, really.
So how many years in the black projects do you think we're ahead than where we are right now?
Well, we know for a fact that gravity research really got going right around 1954. It's believed that a breakthrough was made October 1954, and from that point, they've just completely branched off. So really, at that point, it took off. By the beginning of the Reagan administration, right around 1981, is where the black programs, the black budget started escalating. And from there, there's no telling how far they've gone down the path.
But nothing's present in our technology right now that kind of says that we've reached that point, though. I mean, we've still got cars, we've still got planes.
Sure. There's been little hints here and there. A couple of years ago, there was a sighting of a group of triangles that flew over Amarillo, Texas. You might be familiar with this case. It looks, for all intents and purposes, that they were using electrochromic panels in those particular planes. So what they're doing is they're taking an image of what's in the bottom of the craft, projecting it, and then allowing it to blend in with the background, essentially causing it to become invisible with its background. And they can do this at daytime, they can do this at night, they can project the image of what's above the craft like a star field on the bottom surface, allowing it to blend in with the star field. You'd never know the difference. So they've got that technology, it's a done deal.
And why hasn't that kind of seeped out, do you think, in some respects?
Because you can do the exact same mission you did during Desert Storm 1 with the F-117s, bombing Baghdad at night. Now they can do it in daytime. They're not going to let that technology out.
So basically, our skies are protected in a sense with technology that's more advanced than what we give it credit for.
Absolutely.
And if you control the sky,
correct,
you control the war, basically.
Absolutely.
Right, that's
Yep.
interesting. And obviously your research is very nuts and bolts in the sense that you go out there and find the documentation, knock on doors, speak to people, get it
Yes.
from the first person's mouth rather than second or third or fourth.
I feel that's the only way to do the research. You just can't solve these mysteries by going online and typing something in Google. It's just not going to happen. They're never going to put anything valuable. The way it was described to me is, and I got this from Bill Scott, you're welcome to do anything you want. You're welcome to go to university libraries. You're welcome to interview people. You're welcome to go on the internet if you want. Unless you have something that you can pin down, they don't care what you know, they care what you can prove. And so that's where we're at.
And you're talking about documentation.
Talking about documentation, I'm talking about first-hand eyewitness testimony, physical evidence. That's what is concerning to them. So you're free to go anywhere. You can spend all day on the internet. You're never going to get anywhere. It's only when you get down in the trenches, when you interview people, when you get that physical evidence, now you've got them on alert.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, when you've got that physical evidence, like the documentation, the paperwork, that's,
Right.
you know, government paperwork,
Sure.
you know it's not been forged. This is the real deal.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot in our community. I mean, do you associate with this? Are you part of the UFO community?
Technically, no, but yeah, I've done lectures all around the country. I still do some lectures here and there, but I've said what I wanted to say. I don't feel the need to go out. I don't want to rehash anything. I'm not going to waste anyone's time. If I don't have anything revolutionary to push this field forward, I don't feel the need to go out. I mean, everything I've done is free of charge on the internet. I really don't charge for anything. I think that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, this is kind of what is, would you say, your passion, and then you've got a full-time
It's a
career?
crusade. It's a crusade.
Crusade, you called it. Yeah, I like that.
I never charge for anything. I'm not in it for the money. I'm really in it for, I just want to see the aircraft. I want to see where our tax dollars are going. I know it's there. I know that black landscape is there. I just know it.
Of course, and we're going to get into all this, but just
Yeah.
on that fringe between what you're researching and you know, contacting the desert, for example,
Right.
that's, you know, got all this groundbreaking information on ufology. How much of it do you? I've asked you this, haven't I? You're saying it's high up in the 90s. Have we deluded ourselves in a sense from thinking? We get so set in one truth, don't we?
Right,
And we
right.
don't see the bigger picture sometimes.
The CIA is good at this. I mean, they remember it was the intelligence community back in when the P-59, the first jet-powered aircraft, when it was tested at Muroc, which came to be Edwards Air Force Base, they put a wooden propeller on a jet aircraft and towed it down the runway. I mean, they're concealing what was really going on. They've gone so far beyond that, and what we think could be true, it could be something completely different. We just have to keep in mind that the CIA's mandate is to lie, deny, and deceive. They've done it before. They will not hesitate to do it again.
And do you think that deceivement could also be heavily in the UFO community right now with disinformation by them?
Absolutely. No question about it.
Just to make it look as silly as it can do.
Yeah. And the other thing I've been told is if you want to know the truth about UFOs, forget Blue Book. The Navy's running the program. The Navy's calling the shots. That's what I've been told. And there's some evidence to indicate that, because if the crash retrieval stories are to be believed, something was recovered in 1941 by the U.S. Navy, basically. So it makes sense that they would be leading the role in this case. So difficult to pin down, but that's what we've been told.
Yeah, and I think your work's really important because it helps to ground the rest enormously. Do you feel the other community has taken your work seriously? Do you feel that you've had the limelight that you deserve?
Sure, but you know, I question what impact it's really had. It's difficult to know. It's an unpopular part of ufology, but I think it just needs to be solved. It needs to be checked into.
Well, why do we go for the most stupidest, crazy stories?
Because it's sensationalized, and it's what people want to hear. People, they're more interested in science fiction stories about little green men than they are in the actual aircraft. For instance, 1967, there were allegedly 4 aircraft parked at MacDill Air Force Base, and this story was going to be basically declassified, but at the last minute, they pulled the plug on it, and it was basically the assessment from the Air Force that people were just going to be more interested about sensationalism than they are in the actual aircraft, so they scrapped the whole thing. And they've done that from that time frame. They haven't released anything. Anything that we get is just bits and crumbs. Nothing of any serious value.
So one of the subjects that you've researched heavily as well when it comes to discernment is the Bob Lazar story. What is it about that story, if you could sum it up for us, that really has, you've really been able to put a cap on it and say, no, I've put this to bed, this isn't true, and these are the reasons why?
Mm-hmm. Well, I keep an open mind. Certainly we could be wrong if we're not considering all the evidence, but after looking at his statements through multiple interviews, I've just concluded a couple of things. Just give a couple of few examples. Number one, Bob mentioned that the outer lip or perimeter of the sport model was over his head. So he had to reach up to touch that sort of a sharp radius corner there. And the lip of the part of the exterior, the entry hatch is integrated into the bottom portion of that lip, and it's still over his head, yet he claims that the quote-unquote aliens are 4.5 to 5 feet tall. Well, if that's true, then the entrance hatch is well over the top of their heads. How would they get in? And if they use anti-gravity to get in, then what's the point of a craft at all? And the fact that there's these small seats, if you're creating your own gravitational field and you're canceling out the effects of mass and inertia, what do you need seats for? You could be standing and you'd never know. There'd be no G-forces. There'd be no need for seats if this is true. So what are the seats for, actually? The other thing is, none of the SR-71 or A-12 pilots who've been flown out of Groom Lake over the past 30 to 40 years have ever come forward to conclude or confirm the existence of S4. They were there. They should know. Not one has come forward. So that is something that I don't think anyone has explained or explored. That needs to be pinned down as well.
And have you tried to put that to Bob?
I have not. I've only spoken to Bob twice in my life. And I did write a report with Dan. Edgar Fouché was a major contributing factor to that. But I just basically looked at what Bob said, and I compared it to what we can pin down. For instance, the diameter of the craft, the height of the craft. Those things are the ones that he said. So I just put drawings together, put two and two together, and we've got a contradiction here. How do the aliens get in the craft if the hatch is over their heads? I mean, it has to be explained. Are we to believe that they carry a ladder wherever they go? Why not just make that entry hatch at the bottom? But that's not what he said. That's not in the drawings. It's at the midpoint. So that just needs to be explained.
And are you comfortable talking about the bit of paperwork that you've got as well?
Sure, yeah. I was basically donated a portion of material from John Andrews' widow, Darlene Andrews. And John, for people that don't know, was a senior project design engineer at Tesser's Model Corporation in San Diego. He was responsible for doing the F-19, the F-117. They did an SR-71. They did the sport model under Bob's direction. And after John passed away, there were basically 7 boxes of original material that I was fortunate enough to acquire. In that material was a letter from John Lear that did discuss how, they were inspired to maybe produce some videos and maybe they could make a couple of bucks here and there. I don't really consider it a mind-blowing bombshell. I don't think they were trying to cash in on it. That's not really what is said within that bottom sentence, but I think it's historical nonetheless.
Yeah. And this was back when VCRs were around as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
definitely.
You couldn't pirate it as easy.
No.
I mean, it did. Piracy was around, but I mean, it was just, there was no internet either.
No internet.
So, to make money from something like that would have been a lot easier. But as you say, that's not how you read it, how you take it.
That's not how I read it, because the advertisements for that videotape were like on the back pages of ufology magazines. It was $29.95. I question whether they even sold 1,000 copies. So it was not a money maker, no doubt.
Yeah. Why do you think Bob Lazar did what he did and came forward like he did? Is there anything in Bob Lazar's story that you think rings any truth, or do you think it's a lot of misinformation or some good information mixed with the misinformation?
Well, the whole account of the Monitor, the Las Vegas newspaper, with him with the jet car, that's true, no doubt about it. The whole discussion of Dr. Edward Teller giving a lecture at Los Alamos and him being there, I believe that's true as well. I think that happened as well. Bob talks about going to Area 51 to get a test for some type of a reaction. I think that may be true because he did discuss very early on seeing something that he termed the Aurora, which he thought was like an overgrown X-15, kind of a highly swept thing. But then he said that there were exhaust ports in the back of the craft that what he termed were ventilating grates, or kind of like Venetian blind grates in the back of it. That's very interesting because many years later in 2006, when Bill Scott published the Blackstar article, eyewitnesses within that article discuss the aft end of the Blackstar parasitic aircraft that fits up inside the mothership. That also had these exhaust ports with these HVAC grates, exactly what Bob had said years ago. So how did Bob know about that? It doesn't prove Bob's story. It just states that maybe he did see something, but that doesn't relate to what happened at Alleged S4, though. So
you had fellow pilots, I believe, that had flown from 51, or you knew somebody that had flown from 51?
There are at least 2 engineers and pilots that were based out of Area 51, associated with the A-12 program, which, according to Edgar Fouché, told me that they never heard anything about an S4 facility. They never saw an S4 facility. There is no facility there, according to these A-12 SR.
And they told Fouché, which then
of course, he told me that.
He told you. And Fouché's passed away a few years ago.
Fouché has passed away. Yeah. Now, the only reason why I bring up the correlation with Bob is because I did interview 3 people who allegedly have seen the Blackstar program. So I believe that is a real program. Now, if that's true, that jives with what Bob had said. It doesn't prove Bob's S4 facility with the sport model, but it sort of lends credence to at least something that he have seen. Now, I question it because if he drove in a bus with blacked out windows, how could you see the back of it? Unless, it just doesn't make any sense, because even behind the driver, there's allegedly a screen, right? So that you can't even see out the front. So how could Bob even see that?
Right, absolutely. It doesn't add up or make any sense.
It doesn't add up
whatsoever. What do you think about John Lear's involvement in the whole story? How do you take John Lear in a...
Mm-hmm. John Lear's a friend of mine. I've known him for many years. I support a lot of his research. I have respect for him. He's got more FAA certificates than anyone on the planet, so we can't just throw everything out that John says. He's a good guy. I just don't know what the total truth, like everyone else, they're searching for the truth of S4. I'm just going by what we can prove, what we can pin down. And there needs to be a lot more physical evidence to support or conclude that the S4 facility is actually a true facility. We need more evidence. Yeah.
And that's going to be very hard to, more of the case, impossible to probably get.
Exactly.
Unless it was a deathbed testimony, maybe. Mm-hmm. But then with Bob, what do you think about his certificates as well? Because Stan Freeman brought them up as he disputed the whole thing, didn't he, about his certificates?
Okay. Well, what I will say about that is Jim Goodall, who's a good friend of mine, who's another black aircraft researcher, he met and became friends with Bob before he worked at the S4 facility, allegedly. He told me that he did see Bob Lazar's graduation certificates, diplomas on the wall before they disappeared. Now, I can't prove it. It's just something I was told to me. So, again, it doesn't, prove or disprove the S4 facility. But
and how do we know that what he saw was not faked?
That's true too. We don't know. We don't know. So again, we're left stranded again.
And he's not come forward with anything.
Correct.
And I'm sure the new documentary that's about to come out about him will not answer many of these questions.
Exactly. We need to find out other people that allegedly worked there. We need more physical evidence. It would be great to get building blueprints of the facility. There's got to be something there. For them to do that, there's got to be concrete contractors, all that.
And the people that you've met and interviewed, and we're going to get into this now, but just keep tying this back to Lazar. When you sign the non-disclosure agreement, there's very little you can talk about, really. And with him discussing what he has, he's broken that straight away, completely broken it.
Sure.
So then how can it be true?
I know. There's a lot of things that don't add up. But again, that's the game these guys play. You can always throw in some truth to the disinformation. Maybe the part of the Blackstar was that truth within that story. Because there's some meat on the bones there. There appears to be something there. How did Bob know about that long before it was published?
So you have said this in the interview, that there is misinformation that's purposefully pushed in to disinform people, or to think that they're getting real information, but actually it's kind of 5% is correct and the others
Sure.
a load of rubbish. And that's again what could have happened in this case.
I just think that we should not really be focusing our energy on the Lazar story. I think it's something as not really disinformation, but just something to move our interest away. We should really be pinning down on what Lockheed has really been doing. Things under Ben Rich, things under Kelly Johnson, things under Jack Northrop's company, what they've been doing. That's a story that we can pin down. But yeah.
Absolutely. So let's move into this direction now, and let's just explain who these people were, your involvement in it, and what it was like to meet these people, and what they've told you, what they tell you.
Sure. I've just kind of made it my crusade to document the history of California aerospace. And the reason why I'm living in California is because this is the scene of the crime. This is the state where the magic takes place. All throughout Air Force Plant 42, Palmdale, Lancaster, the Antelope Valley, Mojave, Scale Composites, Edwards Air Force Base, that's where all this is going on. So it's kind of a privilege to even be in this state. That's really why I'm here, because this is where it all goes down. And just to make a really long story short, it was during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel, Egypt, where a lot of Allied F-15s, a lot of Allied aircraft were being shot down. F-4 Phantoms were being shot down. And so it was in 1974 that the Air Force came to DARPA and said, what can we do to curb this? We're just losing way too many planes here. And so they undertook a program called Project Harvey to design, develop, and test fly a low observable aircraft that could sneak in below the radar screen, bomb a target, come back out unscathed. So here's a question for you. If you're going to rob a bank, what would you rather do? You've got two choices. Choice A is go into the bank with guns blazing, gunshots, fire, smoke, chaos, people getting killed and murdered, blood everywhere, bloodshed. You may be able to get into the vault and steal the money. You may not. You're probably going to take a couple of hits by a guard. You may barely get out with your life and then get into the getaway car. That's option A. Option B is you go in quietly. You go in stealthily. You go in below the radar screen without anyone knowing you're there. You steal the money. You get out. You go home. Not a clue. No one knows you're there. Obviously, you want to take option B. That's what they chose to do. That's where they were throwing billions of dollars in classified aircraft research, reducing the radar cross-signature of these aircraft. And that's really what I've been focusing in. And that's where I think all of this stemmed from that point forward. It was in 1974 that really got it going.
So what technology are they using? Where do they get some of this technology from, do you think? Is it just, as we've progressed, we've become cleverer, and one invention leads to another? There's no real, here's some secret technology from this filing cabinet, go reverse engineer that.
Let me give you a quick example here while we're running. So the winner of Project Harvey was an aircraft called the Lockheed Have Blue program. That led to the F-117A stealth fighter that we all know. It's retired. That aircraft was acknowledged November 10th of 1988, but the original prototype flew December 1st, 1977. So for over 10 years, an entire decade went by, and no one knew about this program whatsoever. There were 5 contractors involved in that program. Eventually came down to 2, which was Lockheed and Northrop. Northrop's bid as a competitor to Have Blue was something called the XST. That's this aircraft here, the Experimental Survivable Test Bed. They had a single air intake above the pilot's compartment, 2 canted inward stabilizers. You can see kind of this 75-degree swept wing configuration, diamond configuration, sort of like the Hopeless Diamond. And so the concept being is, if you have a radar wave that hits the side of an aircraft, there's a corresponding return that goes back to the origin point. That's your radar cross signature. That's your response. So Lockheed figured out that if you use multiple faceted flat plates and you angle that, and then you angle it again in 2-axis, you have a much diminished return. Tremendous reduce in radar cross signature. That's how these planes could fly into Baghdad and not get hit. So this is kind of the original part of the stealth technology. Now, from there, we move on to the aircraft, which I think is on this board here. That's this board right here. We'll see how well this actually shows up here. Kind of starting over here on the left-hand side, we talked about this before. So we've got the F-117A stealth fighter that was November 10th, 1980. It was originally acknowledged. Actually, first time was used publicly during that Desert Storm. Successful aircraft configuration. Pentagon ends long silence on stealth fighter. It's for real. Stealth fighter. U.S. unveils stealth bomber. Just kind of a correlation here. So moving over here, November 22nd, 1988, just a few weeks after the acknowledgement of the F-117A, we had the Northrop B-2 stealth bomber. That's Northrop. It was originally built at Pico Rivera, which used to be a retired Ford automobile manufacturing facility. They bought that, so the sub-assemblies for the B-2 stealth bomber are built at Pico Rivera, and then final assembly takes place at the large Northrop facility at Air Force Plant 42. Now, original bid for the B-2 during the Carter administration was 132 aircraft. By the end of the production run, they only built 21 of them, but they already sunk $22.4 billion for research and development. We could never get that money back. It's already been sunk into the program. So bottom line is, when the production was done after 88, it was $2.3 billion per aircraft, more than its own weight in gold for the B-2 program. Over here we've got A-12 Avenger II, that's a McDonnell Douglas General Dynamics all-weather interceptor. This program got canceled at the cost of $5 billion to taxpayers. This is January 7th, 1991. Dick Cheney canceled this. Within minutes of Dick Cheney canceling this program, boom, 10,000 people lost their jobs. Right off the bat, McDonnell Douglas. There may be something more to A-12 than meets the eye, because a number of black programs, what they do to hide or conceal these programs, for instance, they were told, and we've got this from Bill Scott, on the Blackstar program, people were told to charge time to NASP, which is the National Aerospace Plane, and the A-12 Avenger II. So something from A-12 may have been filtered off and put into a Blackstar program. It's very possible. Down here we've got some of the original quote-unquote Aurora programs. This is John Andrews with his SR-75 Penetrator and Thunder Dart. John's no longer with us, but he was the original interceptor. He's the one who began the black aircraft research. A couple original configurations of B-2 stealth bomber. We didn't know what it looked like until the rollout November 22nd, 1988. And then a couple of other programs here, YF-23, which is the Northrop program, and also the F-22, which is the Lockheed program. Now, keep in mind, it's $412 million per aircraft on the F-22. Talking about the Joint Strike Fighter, they have spent enough money on the Joint Strike Fighter F-35 to provide every homeless person in America a $600,000 mansion. That's how much they spent on the F-35. They're $162 billion over budget. They're 7 years behind schedule at this point right now. So that's kind of a brief overview of some of the aircraft programs. Okay, we'll move on to Hudson Valley Boomerang. This is between 1982 and 1989. We have 25,000 eyewitnesses reporting a very large boomerang or chevron-shaped craft having tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the vehicle, multicolored flashing lights, and then transparent panels where you could look up inside the craft, which is exposing a cross-beam and girder construction like a truss bridge. Many of the eyewitnesses said that when this thing was flying overhead, number one, it was silent, But also, number two, there was a low frequency electrical humming noise like a transformer. And they said that when the lights flashed, they went in sequence. So you have reds going off, you have blues going off, you have greens going off, yellows and whites, all up and down the wing of this craft in sequence. Why would aliens do that? Why would aliens need wings at all if you're from outer space? There's no aerodynamic principles out there. So why would you need that? Now, this is kind of a rare shot here. This is a model that was done by Tony Gonzalez, a scale model based exactly, repeat, exactly after the eyewitness testimony. He's got the transparent panels in here. Now, he passed away years ago, but this whole thing is motorized. There's hair dryer motors in here that lights up. It's just an incredible working model. The guy did a fantastic job. Here's a photograph of him during one of his lectures and a kind of a model that I built here. But he describes what these people are seeing. And this thing just made some incredible flight maneuvers that are not consistent with ultralights flying in formation. Here I put together what the original configuration of the B-2 looked like prior to the wing redesign. It was a single sawtooth trailing edge rather than the double W that we see today. This is exactly what eyewitnesses were reporting right around 82, 83 timeframe. Just exactly the same. Here's the cards that I gave you here. This was the March 24th, 1983. This was a Thursday night where there were literally thousands of people on the Taconic State Parkway, which I've got here, that pulled off to the side of the road, slammed on their brakes, got out of their car, and were looking up in absolute awe at this massive boomerang-shaped craft that was shining a light down on the cars below and had these transparent panels where you could look up inside the craft showing the crossbeam and girder construction. This is Thursday, March 24th, 1983. So, question for you. What happened one day prior to this? Do you know?
No.
What happened March 23rd, 1983?
My history's terrible.
That's okay, that's okay. It was Reagan's address to the nation to pitch SDI. So one day later we have this. I think there's a connection between SDI and this craft.
And SDI is?
Strategic Defense Initiative. It's the Star Wars program. I think what we're looking at, and there's some good evidence to back this up, is we are looking at a mobile, airborne, over-the-horizon radar system that could be placed over cities and basically can be used to track incoming ICBMs, and it can be moved to any city. And this explains the silent part of the flight path. It explains the tubes, pipes, cylinders. It explains the transparent panels. It explains the light pattern. There's a lot of explanation that goes with that theory. Other eyewitnesses seeing the same thing, these multicolored flashing lights, tubes, pipes, and cylinders, by multiple eyewitnesses talking about these pipes, cylinders, a donut-shaped ring in the bottom midsection of the craft where all these pipes would lead to, okay? Are we looking at a superconductor with liquid nitrogen as a cooling agent to turn the entire thing into one large superconductor? And superconductors only work when they're super chilled down to about minus 273 degrees Kelvin. So is that what we're looking at? Just a massive superconductor. Now this is Monique O'Driscoll, who also saw the Hudson Valley Boomerang. Her daughter, by the way, coincidentally, was also named Monique. They were driving in their station wagon, or their car, and the daughter saw the lights first. They chased it to a place called White Pond, where this thing was hovering over a frozen pond. It made a 180-degree flat turn, kind of like looking back at her, and then up and down the bottom wing of this thing, these multicolored lights started flashing, and she saw the reflection on the frozen ice below. Very good eyewitness report. Here's the Taconic State Parkway. This is March 24th, 1983, which was a Thursday. And I also wanted to highlight that classified aircraft test flights are generally done on a Thursday nights. All throughout the early to mid 90s, we heard report after report of these booms going on in Los Angeles Basin, always on a Thursday. Well, this was on a Thursday. March of 1997, when the Phoenix Lights took place, that was also a Thursday too, that took place. So this is Hudson Valley Boomerang. Now, going back to the flight path, this is what they described seeing on March 24th, 1983. Now, keep in mind, You've got the tubes, pipes, cylinders, you've got the transparent panels, you've got the multicolored flashing lights. When this thing was over the Taconic State Parkway, it did not do one of these turns. Okay, this is how a B-2 turns, by putting on aileron and then coming back this way. That's not how this thing turned. Did one of these, like it was on a turntable, or someone took a pen and went through the vertical axis and spun it between their forefinger and their thumb like this. That's how this craft turned. This is not something that you get with a regular aircraft. And a lot of these sightings took place after 10:30, well after sundown. According to the FAA, ultralights are not allowed to fly a half an hour after sunset. So we're not talking about ultralights. They can't hover, they're not silent. So we're talking about something completely different here. This is the craft that Monique O'Driscoll reported seeing. Now she said she saw tubes, pipes, cylinders, also multicolored flashing lights, one light in the center which was really large. And then she reported these HVAC vents or grating on the bottom of the craft. This craft also did one of these flat 180-degree turns as well. So we've got at least 2 eyewitnesses who have seen similar technology, similar flight path at 2 different dates. Okay, move on to this one. This is the Aerospace patch collection. Just do a quick rundown on here. If you look at the top section here, you've got X-51, you've got hypersonic aircraft, you've got the X-37, we've got lifting body configurations. This is an early patch at Edwards. You've got Challenger, you've got X-38, which was a recovery system for space station. You've got X-37, they're heavily involved. They've got their own skunk works at Boeing as well, called the Phantom Works. X-30 NASP, that was one of the programs we talked on that was allegedly being charged to for Blackstar program. X-34, these are all the stealth aircraft, F-117, Grim Reapers. You've got Team Nighthawk, Team Stealth, when it absolutely positively has to be taken out overnight. These are from Lockheed, directly from Lockheed Skunk Works. We Rule the Night, Night Stalkers, Saddam Hussein. Okay, next one here. These are the intelligence, basically the intelligence patches. And what you do in these patches is they will not declassify sensitive information, but they will encrypt, secretly encrypt symbology within these patches. And if you can figure out how to read the symbology, you can figure out what they're trying to say. For instance, bird of prey. This is October 2002 during the Bush administration where this aircraft was actually declassified. But if you had this patch prior to 2002, you could look at the handle of the sword is the top view of the aircraft itself. So it's a perfect match essentially to what the aircraft actually looks like. HQ U.S. Air Force Special Programs. Here you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 stars. Do you know what that stands for? Okay, so 5 stars, 151 Area 51. This is the patch that the pilots wear on their flight suits for Tacit Blue test flights during the 1980s at Area 51. Okay, 1955, 50 years of flight test. Okay, Groom Lake, Nevada, 2005. So let's break this down. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 5 stars, 1, Area 51, okay? Here you've got the Groom Lake Mountains, that's the mountain range. U-2 spy plane under Kelly Johnson CIA program. First flight was 1955 at Area 51, which really got Area 51 going. Then you've got a cloud with lightning coming out of it, right? But it's not lightning, it's EW, it's electronic warfare. Goblins is a stealth counterpoint. This is a parabolic dish that shoots out the radar beams, and theta is the Greek symbol that they use to calculate radar cross signature. 51 is for Area 51. This is the Boeing Phantom Works bird of prey. Roadrunners is the international group of A-12, SR-71, and U-2 spy plane pilots that meet each year, sometimes in Nevada. Scorpions is the squadron of F-117 pilots, and the Whale is the nickname for Tacit Blue, which was the predecessor to B-2. Alien reproduction vehicle, this has to be relinquished to Mark McCandlish. That's his story. Not totally authorized to discuss that. Groom Lake Dry Lake Bed, this is a patch that Jim Goodall put together. In God we trust, all others we monitor, all the different alphabet agencies. Okay, now moving on to this one. This is a Phantom who is carrying a stick, and it says NKAWTG ... nobody. Any idea what that means? Okay. It stands for Nobody Kicks Ass Without Tanker Gas, nobody. And what that means is that nobody can do any operations, not even the classified world, without the tankers. And so this is a refueling boom that he's holding here. National Reconnaissance Office, going down to this one. Now these are unmanned aerial vehicles, a majority of them here. Here we've got Global Vigilance, the replacements. So you've got a Terminator Skull. All of these are unmanned programs. Predator program, Hypersonic, U-2 Dragon, Lockheed Air Force Plant 42. Down here you've got some B-2, you've got Skunk Works, Shuttle Carrier, that's now at the facility at Palmdale, Spirit of America. So that's kind of a brief overview of the patches.
Now, if there wasn't a patch there, then basically the program would not exist.
Well, generally, when they have a program, they make a patch for it. And they can conceal it because nobody outside that program knows what that patch means.
Where did you get those? Are those patches authentic or reproductions?
No, they're absolutely authentic. I purchased them from the world's premier aerospace patch collector. Yep, they're all real.
Even the alien reproduction?
That one is one I made up. With the exception of that one, they're all real.
Right.
Yeah.
Just making sure we're on the
Yes,
same page
correct.
there. Yeah. And there's probably many more that are out now.
There's many more. Yes, there are.
Are there ones in existence that are top secret that haven't come out?
I'm sure there are. You know, they don't have to make a patch for it, but generally, you know, they do make a patch for it. Like Boeing Phantom Works Bird of Prey, that patch was made before that program was declassified.
And obviously, these are Californian programs, yeah?
Basically.
So what about all the rest of the states? What about all the rest of the world?
Well, I'm sure there's more, but, you know, I focus in on what is happening at Air Force Plant 4. I mean, really, this, you know, I'm not telling you what to do, but if you want to do a trip that will, you know, complete some of the gaps, is take a drive out to Air Force Plant 42, Antelope Valley. That's where all of this is going on. This is the heart of the military-industrial complex. It's the scene of the crime that I call it. That's where it's all going on there.
And what would you do if you were down there? What would you?
Well, you can do the SR-71 display. You can do the whole museum outside there. You're allowed to drive along the perimeter of Air Force Plant 42. I hired out Peter Merlin. We did an entire tour of Air Force Plant 42. You can go up to Mojave. You can do the Mojave Airport. Scale Composites is involved as well. You can go into some of the driveways of some of the facilities there, but a lot of the people who work at Skunk Works are just right there. They're right there in Palmdale. They're right there in Lancaster. While all this was going on, you know, Northrop during the mid-1980s, there were thousands of people working. That's really where it all takes place.
And are you trying to trace these people?
Sure, absolutely.
And what do you think they're going to be able to? What have they told you compared to what you think that they cannot talk about as well, percentage-wise as well?
They've told me that there is a black world out there. They've told me that there are a combination of both manned and unmanned classified programs that have not been declassified within the Reagan administration. A fact, an absolute fact, without any question. So there is a classified world that we don't know about, that is paid for by American taxpayers, that has no congressional oversight, no public scrutiny. It does exist. Yeah.
And continues to exist.
And continues to exist and continues to flourish.
Would the president be informed of any of this?
The president is a temporary employee, so he does not have a need to know on a lot of these programs. Even the House and Armed Services Committee, a lot of these programs are above them as well. The way it was told to me is, if you want to know, like the three power players, number one, George Bush Sr., he knows a lot. Dick Cheney knows a lot. And former Secretary of Defense William Perry. These three people know more than almost anyone on this planet.
Yes, but what committee is overseeing all this?
Yeah.
These are outside of the jurisdiction of the system that we're involved with.
The truth is not hidden within the government. That's the first thing. The truth is hidden within the contractors themselves. It's the contractors themselves that are concealing a tremendous amount of this. It's above political figures.
Contractors working for who, though?
Yeah, well, working for some of the agencies. But some of the classified, unacknowledged special access programs are running rogue, completely rogue. So they almost answer to themselves. We're at a point now where, like the F-35 program, the fixes for the F-35 program are more profitable for Lockheed Martin than the aircraft itself. You're talking about $163 billion over budget, and they get a slap on the wrist, that's it. But yet if we're one day late paying our taxes, they will find you and make an example of you in the Amazon jungle if they have to find you.
But then if they've gone rogue, right?
Yeah.
How can the US government use them in time of need?
Because they've got programs, according to Ben Rich, that are already 40 years old that they still can't talk about today. They could bring out something 40 years old right now and it'd still be advanced more than anything that's out there.
Okay, so that we were to go to some sort of small-scale war in the future, and the government, as it is right now, you're saying that these operations are out of the normal jurisdiction, separated,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Well, that's no good to us then, is it? I mean, who is that going to help in a time of need?
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, they will more quickly let a city go up in flames or in a mushroom cloud than they will to declassify this. So that's what I mean by a lot of these USAF programs that have no congressional oversight, no public scrutiny. It's the contractors themselves and perhaps a very small group of controllers that are involved in this.
But to do what with it, though? I mean, what good is it?
To do that breakaway civilization that we've heard about. If they do have the technology that we've seen some of it here, which I believe is true, then we are living in the Matrix. We are living in a facade world. They've got the toys. They've made the break. They've been doing it since 1954.
A breakaway civilization to where?
Good question. According to Ben Rich, they already had the technology to travel among the stars. If that's true, it's hard to pin that down, but if that's true, then they've already been there. They've already explored the inner solar system. That's hard to believe. That's hard to pin down. There's no physical evidence to pin that down, but I'm just going by what Ben Rich had talked about.
And what if Ben Rich was wrong?
Ben Rich could be wrong. It's possible. But for someone of that caliber to make that statement before he passed away, essentially a deathbed statement, because this is just like a day or two before he died, telling Jim Goodall, I take it to the bank.
What about if he had heard that from someone else and he was just repeating what he'd heard from someone else? And
I understand what you're saying, but I believe that to be Ben Rich's own words, period. That was just his words from working at the Skunk Works since 1975.
What does that do for us, though? I mean, if there is a breakaway civilization, so what?
It means that we're living in technologies and we're using 747s to get to Heathrow from O'Hare, and we're just chugging along at 550 miles an hour.
But what can we do about it?
We should be trying to see how we can get that technology declassified and brought into the common fold. That's what we should be doing. But it's just so locked up. Even Ben Rich said it would never see the light of day. He even knew it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
That was from him. He said take an act of God to get it declassified. That's how black it is.
Now, you have to know that, I find that hard to swallow, the breakaway civilization, because, they're not there to help. They're on their own path.
They're on their own path.
And no one seems to know nothing about it, and it can't advance us in any way.
It's not going to help us. It won't help us. It'll help them, but it won't help us. Now, I'm just going by what Ben Rich has stated and following the leads of the black world over the past 50 years. It certainly believes they have made the breakthrough.
But then your research is better than that sometimes, right? Your research is based on factual evidence. You'll go door to door to speak to some of these people, ex-workers that have retired, and you'll get the documentation. That's where you shine in your research. What we're just discussing there is non-provable, but the stuff that you have worked on is completely provable.
At the very least, it's not like an internet rumor or just something you found on the internet. Like when I say that we allegedly made a breakthrough in 1954. That's because the newspaper clippings that I've compiled state that in more than just one case. Multiple cases where they were hiring universities to work on gravity control. They were hiring Bell Aircraft. They were hiring Sperry Rand Corporation, New York corporations working on it since 1954, pouring millions of dollars into gravity research. And then we get these sightings of these circular shaped craft hovering, wobbling, making these electrical humming noises, having electromagnetic disturbances with car radios in the near vicinity, all within that same time period,
So these folders that are down here, we're just
Right.
going to put that on camera now.
Sure.
These contain clippings from what type of newspaper?
Newspaper clippings, interviews, drawings, photographs, diagrams, illustrations, full color articles tracking the black world.
Wow, there is books and books worth here. Have you ever considered publishing this?
Some of it I have on YouTube, I mean, again, I'm not in it for the money. I could care less. I just want to know, and I want to help my fellow person.
How many folders do you have?
197 total in 3 locations.
Oh my God. This is a lifetime's worth of great work.
It's a lifetime's work.
Yeah.
It's irreplaceable. It could never be it could never be copied again. It's just too much work. It's just, and the way that universities work now, they got rid of their microfilm printers. You will not find a microfilm printer in a university setting, period. They got rid of all of them. It's all digital. But the problem is, when you pull the reel out, it's impossible to work with it. It's better to work with the ones from the 1970s. You could just put it in, feed the strip through, go to where you want it on the date, hit press, return, and boom, it spits out an article. Now you got to go through, you got to scan it, you got to put it in a thumb drive. It's impossible to work with it. And I finished up my research, like literally within minutes of them getting rid of all that stuff. So I got in just below.
Was that the cartridges that you used to put in?
Well, just, when you pull up the New York Times, LA Times article, you find the dates that you want, then you go to the microfilm room, huge at ASU. They have a huge room dedicated to nothing but, back issues of newspaper. It's just heaven, just total heaven for someone like me, right? So you grab like 10 of these at a time, and you go over to the microfilm reader printer, and you just pull them up. You start going, you go right to the date you want, and then you print the article. Done, it's easy. You go to the next one. Now they've made it so hard.
Well, I'm grateful for what you've done here, because I know that one day you're going to do something more, that this is going to be
I hope
shared.
so.
I think so.
I don't think people care, though. I care, but nobody cares. It's okay, though. It's all right.
I think you have to care before anyone else does.
I care, but nobody cares.
Well,
but it's all right. It's all right.
You may be surprised.
It's all
right. You might be surprised.
It won't be repeated, I can assure you that. No one's going to bother to go down in those libraries. In fact, you can't do it now. They don't have the printers. They got rid of all of them. They jammed up all the time anyway. They were always under repair. And now they're totally replaced with digital units, which makes it 10 times harder to get the information.
I mean, there's so much we could talk for hours with your work. There is just so much to it. What would you say is some important key points that we've not covered right now that you'd like to?
I just let the documents and the drawings do the talking at this point,
Yeah.
I mean, you got the idea. I'm just convinced in a nutshell that there is a black world that's triggered from the early Reagan administration.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What's your views on the secret space program?
I absolutely believe there is a secret space program. One good example is the Blackstar program. We can get into that if you want, but absolutely convinced there is a secret space program. It may not be to the extent of kilometer-long battleships that we've heard about, but I do believe there's a secret space program. And I've got the documentation, interviews, and notes to back it up.
And when you say secret space program, we're talking what? Another international space station somewhere?
No, we're talking about a rapid response, hypersonic, 2-stage orbit spaceplane system that has yet to be declassified.
Well, that's more believable than the stories that are out there.
Exactly.
Right. Now that
Correct.
I could go with.
Correct. That is part of the secret space program. Yep. It's a program that Bill Scott had been tracking for 16 years.
What about secret spy satellites as well?
Sure, yeah. Bill Scott is the expert on that, no doubt. I got to give credit to Bill. I mean, he's been chasing this for his entire career at Aviation Week, Space Technology. He is the most credible, believable the man with the most integrity within this field is Bill Scott. And if Bill Scott is convinced it's a real program, then you can bank on it. You can take it to the bank.
Yeah, I mean the idea of being in these huge spacecrafts and everything else. I mean, it's just laughable, right? It makes us look so stupid, right? There is no proof. There never is. With something that you're discussing there, there's some proof behind that, because you've got some information behind what you're saying.
It sounds incredible. It sounds intriguing. It's inspiring to think that we've got like a mile-long aircraft carrier out in space. We might. It's possible. Can you prove it? Can you pin it down? Probably not. I choose to go to something that we really can pin down. Something that we've got some documentation, some paperwork, some historical legacy to back it up.
Well, like I said at the beginning of this interview, there's been so much misinformation out there that's really destroyed and harmed the whole UFO subject and made it look completely ridiculous.
Absolutely. That's not by chance either.
You might be more right than you think there, yes. Yeah, and I never wanted to go down that road thinking that way, but you know what? There's not many options left for you to think sometimes, is there?
I'm not the only one saying it. No less than Bill Scott had highlighted that. If there was an accidental sighting of a classified aircraft test flight, the very next day you'll read in the supermarket checkout tabloids, space alien baby welcomes President Clinton because of a sighting that took place. The very same, within 24 hours, you'll read this, trying to explain away that case. And, this is something that the CIA has pulled for 50 years. Why would they stop now? That's what they've done. They've used the extraterrestrial phenomenon as a cover to hide their own deep black programs.
What do you think about people that have the night vision scopes and they see unidentified images of craft up there?
I think it could very well be a lot of our craft. Certainly, yep. Especially on a Thursday nights. Absolutely on a Thursday nights, because
do you think that's worldwide on a Thursday? Or
it was for the U.S. It was for the U.S. because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is pre-flight. Thursday's test flight, Friday's debrief, Saturday, Sunday, nobody there. And that held true up until the mid to late 1990s. Yeah. So along with the Hudson Valley Boomerang, we've got the triangles. Nothing's complete unless you discover the triangles as well. Now, this is a case I got from David Marler. It did not make it into his book, but he was gracious enough to give me the original sketch. I've got the eyewitness report. I've got the original sketch. So when I show you something here, it's not like I'm making it up. It comes directly from him. This is a 35-year-old retired police officer who was driving with his wife after a Fleetwood Mac concert. Okay, this is back in 1990, August 25th, 1990. So they're driving down the road, and out from this misty, dark cloud emerges this 100-foot wide per side flying triangle, black, with a light at each of the corner, one at the center, and then this relieved section on the bottom of the craft exposing these tubes, pipes, and cylinders, kind of like a crossbeam and girder construction, just like the Hudson Valley Boomerang. He also said that he saw what looked like human test pilots looking back at him, and there was nothing alien about what these test pilots looked at. So here's the actual cardstock model of that particular craft. This was a case that I got from Linda Zimmerman. She interviewed a reference librarian who during the mid-1980s saw a gigantic black flying triangle, 75-degree isosceles, kind of a swept wing configuration that was, we've heard of these reports that an aircraft was the size of a, kind of like a baseball field, right? We've heard that many times. Or a baseball diamond or a football field. This particular craft was the size of a football field stadium. Huge, 800 feet across. There was an iris that opened up on the bottom, exposing the interior of the craft. She was below it. She got an interior view of what it looked like. She said it looked like terraced apartment complex buildings with multiple lights on the interior structure. And so this iris opens up, and then this red orb comes up inside the iris, it closes, and then this thing flies away from a reference librarian. So now we've got 1989, 1990 Belgium Triangle case. We've got about 5,000 eyewitnesses reported during that time frame. We've got 2 F-16 reports on their own onboard radar of this thing moving at incredible speeds, making 40 G turns acceleration, enough to kill a pilot. But then I want to highlight the tubes, pipes, and cylinders, exactly what we saw on the Hudson Valley Boomerang. It's the exact same thing that was witnessed on the January 5th, 2000 Southern Illinois Triangle case, where we had multiple police officers in at least 5 different counties seeing at least 5 different configurations, one that looked like a single-story ranch with a penthouse on top. And this also had these electrochromic panels on the bottom of the craft, allowing what was on top of the craft to be projected on the bottom, causing it to become invisible, blending in with its background. This was a good case, November 22nd, 1985. Eyewitness saw basically a large black triangle with these, what he termed refrigerating cooling pipes on the bottom with this electrical humming noise. And basically he said that, I've got the whole thing right here. This is according to the eyewitness. The back of the refrigerator, the back of a refrigerator, like a collection of condensation pipes that ran back and forth. And we're supposed to believe this is an alien craft? No way, not a chance. Colin Saunders' craft, this is March 31st, 1999. Got a good cardstock model of that. 4 eyewitnesses saw this. It made a 90-degree tip-up turn like it was underwater, according to Colin Saunders. Very interesting case. So now let's move on to, we can do the other boards as we go along here. But this is the case from the reference librarian, where I was hovering over her at a bus stop. Here's where the iris opened up. You can see I've cut away the interior. You can see the interior section of these terraced apartment complexes that were stacked one on top of the other. So keep in mind, this is 800 feet across, 75-degree swept wing isosceles triangle seen by a reference librarian. Very good case. Moving on to January 5th, 2000. This is slightly beat up, but this is the Melvin Knoll case, where he was a truck driver. At the end of his shift, he pulled into his miniature golf course, and this thing was just silently floating by. And there were at least 4 other triangles seen that night by multiple police counties. Very good case. Some of those had what looked like Legos stacked on the bottom of the craft. Very interesting case. This is from Colin Saunders. I've got a 3D printout of him, but this is my cardstock. Now, the original eyewitnesses, there were 4 of them, saw this at about a 15-degree angle of attack with the 4 back lights at about a 15-degree angle of attack. As they got closer, the eyewitnesses saw this craft make this 90-degree tip-up maneuver very slowly like it was underwater, and exposing these box-like relief sections that he believed might have been some kind of a docking mechanism with a mothership as well. So we've got his case on file as well. Here's that case we talked about. This was a case that was seen in Missouri. I've got the paperwork here. But this one flew over the eyewitness's house. He was in the living room, and as it flew over, it, quote, made pictures on the living room fall onto the floor of the living room. So this is making kind of this low frequency humming noise. Now, he said that this thing had steel girders and what looked like rusty steel rivets that came directly off the Golden Gate Bridge, only about 50 minutes from here. So this is the eyewitness case I got from Koufos Archives, 2457 West Peterson Avenue. Here is the case from the police officer that saw the relief section on the bottom of the craft with the crossbeam and girder construction. Reference that with the 82 to 89 Hudson Valley Boomerang case. We keep hearing about these tubes, pipes, cylinders on the bottom of these vehicles. There has to be a purpose for it. Has to be a purpose for it. Here is that one case from November 22nd, same date as the rollout of the B-2, interesting, where the eyewitness stated that he saw these condensation pipes running back and forth on the back of an alien spacecraft. No way. We're looking at a man-made technology here. Here is the Belgium Triangle. This is 1989, 1990. We're looking at about 5,000 eyewitnesses. They also reported these tubes, pipes, cylinders. There was a red or amber light on the bottom of this, and then these high-intensity spotlights shining down. Spotlights on an alien spacecraft an electrical humming noise, and tubes, pipes, cylinders with a red blinking amber light in the center? No. We're looking at a man-made technology. Now, moving on to March 1997, this is where thousands of people near Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, this is also on a Thursday night, reported seeing this 1,500-foot wide boomerang or chevron-shaped craft flying over on a Thursday night. I'm thinking what we could be looking at here is an airborne holographic image projection technology, because this is borne out by Air Force Report 2025 that talked about using an airborne holographic image projector, where you could take a actual aircraft that had one of these devices on it, and then you could project an image of an F-117 a mile away, and the enemy would never be able to tell the difference.
And how are these flying without conventional engines as well?
Well, this is a projected image. This is not even a real craft, because a lot of people said that this thing looked transparent. You could see through it. It's a done deal. I mean, concerning what Ben Rich had talked about, we could definitely have that technology, no doubt about it. We talked about the Northrop XST 1974 stealth technology. Moving on to a case I've also got from the archives where, and I've got the date here for this in the paperwork, gentleman was driving to work in the morning on his motorcycle. Next thing he knew, his motorcycle conked out, and he looked up and he was basically under this big black square, and there were tubes, pipes, and cylinders. So that's 4 cases now of these cylinders. And it had all these lights that were bathing him in a bright white light. The motorcycle was completely dead. He ended up walking his motorcycle back to his home 3 miles away, and he noticed that as he was walking the motorcycle back, he got under the square, and it was the bottom of a large triangle that he was under. When investigators got to him 2 weeks later, they found that his entire motorcycle was magnetized. So it had some like third counter effects to it. So it was more than just a CE1 case. It actually had some kind of disturbance to his motorcycle. So at this point, what we can do here is we can break into some of these if you want to as well. We can make a little bit of room maybe over here. I'll clean up some of these, but we can do this kind of like over here, but just quickly. Hudson Valley Boomerang, 1982 to 1989, 25,000 eyewitnesses, shows you the internal structure of the craft. Here's the multicolored flashing lights of what was seen, the tubes, pipe, cylinders, the translucent panels. Then I go over to here, I show you the test flight. I give you the date, Taconic State Parkway, March 24th, 1983, starting south at Millwood, weaving its way on the Taconic State Parkway toward Franklin Del Roosevelt. This is near Yorktown Heights. And it was making this zigzag maneuver. But as it was turning, it made these flat 90 and 180 degree turns, not something an ultralight can do. Here's a schematic drawing based off eyewitness reports. Here's the large drawing here. And, you know, certainly you can go home with one of these, so you can keep that one. So then I did a scientific analysis of what it would take to fake the Hudson Valley sightings, right? A lot of people claim that it was planes flying in formation. And to be honest, yes, there were some cases of, they called it the Stormville Flyers, who were trying to fake the Hudson Valley Boomerang sightings. Now, the people that saw the planes flying in formation and saw the actual Hudson Valley Boomerang could tell instantly it was 2 different things. You know, there's no way they could mimic it. Now, so if you're flying in formation, and let's say that there's 20 feet separation, you can hold that relatively well, right, in straight formation flight. Here's where it gets interesting, right? If you want to make a turn, the inside pilot has to slow down, while the outside pilot, it's physics, right? The outside pilot, in order to maintain formation, he has to speed up. That's the only way that you can do this. But yet the Hudson Valley Boomerang remained completely dead silent, and it hovered, completely stopped, 0 miles per hour. You can't get that flying Cessnas in formation. Can't be done. But here's where it goes off the chain, right? Witnesses reported that the Hudson Valley Boomerang made a 180 degree flat turn, hovering completely silently. Here's where it goes off the rails, because the lead pilot has to make this 180-degree left-hand turn. The pilots at the left have to go backwards. Repeat, backwards in flight. Pilots at the right have to go forward. If you take a plane and hover and go backwards, you'll stall the wing. It'll crash to the ground in a big ball of flames. So we can prove without a doubt that it wasn't a group of pilots flying in formation. Here is the Monique O'Driscoll craft. I've got her original report. Here's the tubes, pipes, cylinders. This shows you the schematic of the HVAC vents right here. Here's the cardstock model blueprints. Here's the light shining down. This is a series of illustrations that were done by my good friend Tom Bogan. Here's Monique O'Driscoll. Here is her daughter in the car with the static on the radio hovering over the frozen lake at White Pond during her sighting. Here's the multicolored flashing lights. This is a blow up of the tubes, pipes, cylinders. Here you can see she's looking at the craft. This is after it made that 180-degree flat turn. All while this is going on, Monique inside was trying to tune to another frequency, but there was static. Now, that's what you would expect if you have a high electromagnetic field within the vicinity of this craft, indicating that they were using perhaps a liquid hydrogen cooling agent to turn it into a superconductor.
And that would give it flight.
That would allow it to levitate. If the whole thing was, needed to be super chilled, which we believe that's the case. So this is that whole series. I go on to this is a kind of a world exclusive here. This is an illustration of that airborne mobile over-the-horizon system. It explains everything in the Hudson Valley Boomerang. You've got the multicolored flashing lights, you've got the triangle configuration, you've got the transparent panels, you've got the tubes, pipes, cylinders hovering over major cities of the U.S. This could be, ladies and gentlemen, the Hudson Valley Boomerang, which was an offshoot of the Reagan SDI program that really got going after the Reagan administration started in '81. Literally within that year, we started seeing these boomerangs and chevrons hovering over major cities. There's got to be a connection. There's got to be a connection. This was another very good case within Night Siege that was Philip Imbrogno, and also J. Allen Hynek was involved. But here we see these tubes, pipes, cylinders, again with this, what eyewitnesses reported, this donut circular part, which might be this magnetic field disruptor that even Edgar Fachier who talked about. Tubes, pipes, cylinders in this craft. Now we move on to July 24th, 1984, which was basically one of the most significant cases in ufology, where no less than 12 security guards at the Indian Point reactor saw a large, what they term a ice cream shaped craft hovering over a reactor for about 20 minutes with a 35 knot headwind. Okay, here's the actual newspaper clipping of it here. This is an illustration of what it may look like. Now, they reported it as being more of a ice cream cone configuration, but I've got the tubes, pipes, cylinders on the bottom. This is Monique O'Driscoll. This is actual from Reporter Dispatch, White Plains, New York, September 11th, 1983. So here's the paperwork to back it up. This is her eyewitness report talking about her case. Very good case. Here is Monique O'Driscoll describing her sighting. So we've got her report right here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's just see if we can get on to what she says here. Oh, here it is. This is Monique talking. She says, quote, if I had an airplane and not one sound from this thing, something that size, if it had been an airplane, it would shake your windows out. I could see the underbelly part. It's solid. It had metal type work like cross beams and tubular things hanging down there, here and there. I was so close I could have thrown a ball and hit it. So there's Monique O'Driscoll. Tubes, pipes, cylinders on the bottom of an alien spacecraft. I doubt it. Looking at a man-made technology. So again, I'm not making this up. These are all the newspaper clippings talking about the Thursday night's flights going on. Here's News Times, July 20th, 1984. Again, this is all forgotten history. It's like the biggest case in ufology, but it happened over 35 years ago, and now no one even knows about it. Yet it was the biggest thing in the world at that time. It's all like completely forgotten history now. It represents like the largest, most significant case in ufology. 25,000 eyewitnesses. I've got all the newspaper clippings. Let's see, Danbury, Connecticut, huge sightings, April 5th, 1983. UFO is a hoax by top pilots. Yeah, they've hoaxed some of them, not all of them. Hundreds claim to have seen UFO. Daily item, Port Chester, New York, March 26, 1983. Boom. What was that brightly colored object reported area skies on a Thursday? Can't drill it down enough. Thursday night, boom, boom, boom. It goes on and on. 800 observers relieved to learn they were not alone. They had a whole big conference at the local middle school. Over 1,000 people showed up. It was unprecedented, unprecedented. So we could go on, but it gives you an idea. Hudson Valley Boomerang. Boom. Let's go over here. I think I've got my triangle one in here. Yeah. These are the triangles. Here's the actual report. Here's his original sketch, August 25th, 1990. Retired police officer. If you can't believe him, who can you? Here's his original sketch. I didn't make this up. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but look what he says. As the craft passed above, I slowed the car to a virtual stop and leaned out the driver's side window. Then he says this. The side of the craft appeared to have several illuminated windows, and at one of the windows I saw 2 to 3 figures that appeared to be human. Certainly nothing about the figures made me think they were anything other than human, reinforcing my belief that the craft was a military project. Coming from a police officer. So we've got his testimony on file. These are the blueprints. January 5th, 2000, Southern Illinois Triangle case. Very good case. Here's that single-story ranch with a penthouse on top. Here's his original sketch. This is Melvin Noer's original sketch. It's a good case, rock-solid case. Here's the flight path right here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but let's see. He also noticed 2 floors, each having 2 windows. They were described as rectangular with intense white light. Okay, good case, very good case. This came from David Marler. Eyewitness saw this just exactly as the time of the Southern Illinois Triangle case. Kind of a arrowhead with flashing lights at the bottom that were moving like from left to right with these white lights at the back. Very good model that was made. Here's Melvin Knoll. More eyewitness testimony. These are the original paper clippings on the case. Here's the blueprints for the cardstock models.
How much does this cost you to put together?
Who knows? Who knows? You know, it's just so much. Original paper clipping on the sighting. This is good. I like this one here. This is hard to get. Just to let you know, Collinsville Journal, Sunday, January 16, 2000, just like a week or so after. Object in sky draws interest of UFO researchers. Officer says he is 98% sure object was experimental or military. So now here's 2 people claims that it's a military, not alien, military aircraft, right?
Are these scanned in digitally, or are they?
I've got the PDF files for almost everything here. This is all Colin Saunders sighting. Guy did a really good job. Credit to him. Here's the blueprint for the Colin Saunders triangle, so we can build one of those. Here's the AutoCAD drawing. This is the John McNeil drawing of the Belgium Triangle, 1989-1990, with the F-16s. Kind of hard to see, but that shows you that. Here's the breakaway cutaway drawing here showing you the tubes, pipes, cylinders. I've got all the testimony. I've got the heads-up display. I've got the forward infrared-looking radar, manta-shaped craft. So this was an actual exercise that they were doing. 2 eyewitnesses near the railway station reported hearing a faint electrical motor sound. That's the same thing we heard in the Hudson Valley Boomerang. The craft accelerated from 280 kilometers per hour to 1,800 kilometers per hour in less than a second, equivalent to 40 Gs. Boom. So take one of those for your records too. Got that one.
How does the human body kind of do?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. On a Thursday, right? Okay, boom, moving on. Newspaper clippings. Here's the case that we talked about before. That's this model, right? Here's this guy. Madison, Wisconsin, Black Triangle, November 22nd, 1985. Craft looked like the back of a refrigerator. On an alien spacecraft? No way. Not going to happen. Here we go. This is the report from Linda Zimmerman. Got to give her credit. This is the illustration I put together based on Maureen Davis. She was the reference librarian who saw this Yorktown Heights, November 1985, waiting at a bus stop for her husband. This big black triangle comes by, which we have over here, wherever we put that one, back there somewhere. Okay. Where this iris opens up, the red light goes inside, then the thing closes, takes off, made no sonic boom as it departed. Just an incredible case, incredible case. This is what I got from the Koufos Library, 2457 West Peterson Avenue. There are over 60,000 cases there. Basically the world's largest private collection of UFO cases. I spent 3 years going through all 60,000 cases. I pulled out only the ones that had a sketch and a report to go with it. Other than that, I didn't do it. But this is one of the good cases here. Here's what he says. This is Helena, Missouri, March 5th, 2003. This is his original sketch. I'm not making this up. It made pictures fall off my living room wall and shook the whole house as it passed by. And then he says here, rusty looking steel, old bridge steel. The UFO looked like it had rivets on it, old bridge rivets, according to this. Now, on an alien spacecraft, rusty rivets? No. Okay, moving on to TR-3B. Got to give credit to Edgar Fouché. It does not stand for Tactical Reconnaissance. It stands for Teledyne Ryan. This is what we believe the TR-3B to be. Essentially, in a nutshell, he described, now this is coming from Edgar Fouché, a large, it comes in at least two sizes, 300 and 600 feet per side. It has an MFD, magnetic field disruptor, which essentially rotates at 50,000 RPM and pressurizes at 25,000 PSI. The resultant effect is a decrease in G effects up to 89%, meaning that the pilots only feel 11% of the G. So that's how they can make these 40 G turns and feel no effects, essentially. These are more cases. I got some of them from Koufos. I'm going to go into some of these. Belgium Triangle. So you get the idea there. Boom.
Wonderful. Okay.
I'm not going to go through all these, but we can go through some of them here. Okay, this is the Aurora folder. Now, try to really go over this case well. Beginning in the mid-1980s, we started hearing those reports that, maybe they were going to retire the SR-71. Eventually, it was retired. The question has always been, is there an aircraft to replace the SR-71? Bill Scott had been tracking this story throughout his entire career at Aviation Week Space Technology. He has to get credit for doing the legwork. And what we believe took place here, we won't go through all these, but these are all the newspaper clippings. Spy plane could be cause of strange rumblings. Hypersonic jet better than spy plane. European stars, April 20th, 1992. Report says secret plane capable of Mach 8. European stars and stripes. So again, I'm showing you the sources. New spy craft spied by toy plane maker. That's testers. That was John Andrews. U.S. test spy planes over Shetlands. Okay, moving on. Does U.S. have new spy plane? 92. Mysterious tremors rattle Southland puzzle. Experts rule out earthquakes. Star Tribune. Secret is out. Quakes. Okay, 4,000 miles an hour. Again, over and over and over again. So to make it boil down here, what we believe happened is, after the Challenger explosion on January 28th, 1986, the Air Force, the DoD, they were left without what they termed, and this is their term, not my term, this is their term, their controlled access to space, essentially is what it is. Their access to space, because the shuttle is down. So what they started doing is, they started launching these satellites and military payloads on Titan II boosters. But the weirdest thing happened is, they had coincidental Titan II booster failures along with the Challenger explosion. So basically, after January 20th, 1986, the Air Force DoD, they were done. They were out of business for launching things into space. So as the story goes, a rapid response request went to the contractors, including Boeing, Lockheed, Rockwell, General Dynamics, to build a rapid response two-stage to orbit space plane that could launch a military payload anywhere in the world in less than 3 hours. That was the goal. That was the desperate cry that went out. And so what they came up with, according to Bill Scott, we'll go through a few more. U.S. flying new spy plane. Reports of secret test of new plane. Secret is out, quakes, it's a spy plane, LA Times. And then moving on to the configuration. It looks like what they did, starting after Challenger, January 20th, 1986, is they started with a Lockheed Rockwell design. Boeing was used as a subcontractor for final assembly at their facility in Seattle. And here's kind of the original illustration of what testers thought the aircraft actually looked like. Moving over here to some of the different configurations. There's a lot of paperwork to back this up. I'm just going to go right to the drawings here. So Blackstar was the name of the program. The large mothership was called the SR-3. It was 200 feet in long. It had a 120-foot wingspan. It had a crew of 3. It was a kind of a XB-70 offshoot of the 1960s XB-70 program. It was composed of a mothership and a smaller aircraft, a parasitic aircraft. The winglets on this craft were about 16 feet tall and canted up at about a 35-degree angle. As we mentioned before, it had a crew of 3, a pilot, a co-pilot, and then a launch control officer. He's the liaison between the mothership and the parasitic aircraft. There's a refueling boom here at this location for refueling. And then there is a canard section that can move forward and aft for low and high-speed flight. Good drawing of it here. Here you can see the canards. Now this thing was light in color. I have to stress this. This thing was light in color. The parasitic aircraft here is called the XOV, Experimental Orbital Vehicle. We believe at least 3 of these craft were built, and at least 2 motherships were built as well. This measures between 65 to 90 feet in length. It has a crew of 1 for the larger craft. Here is John Andrews. He's the one who did the legwork that came up with the SR-75 penetrator model. This is the very last issue of the Aviation Week Space Technology Blackstar program. March 6, 2006 is when this story broke. Now keep in mind, Bill Scott had been tracking this 16 years earlier, so he already did the legwork. This is a kind of a world exclusive. This is an original sketch from an F-15 pilot who saw this at an Air Force base when this space plane landed, and it was being loaded into a C-5 Galaxy. So you can see the 75-degree swept wing configuration, blended lifting body configuration, crew of 1. You can see that they had some red thermal protection areas on the leading edge of the wing. And then, not to say I'm supporting Bob Lazar, but this is the location, the aft end of the parasitic aircraft that had that HVAC ventilating vents or grating on the back of that craft. And we'll get into that. This is it right here. So we'll start at the left. We've got a stubby tail here, which was described by the F-15 pilot, seen at Holloman Air Force Base, February 1994. This is when this actually happened. We've got these air intake, air brakes that were deployed when the F-15 pilot saw it. Vent grate exhaust port. Now this is what Bob Lazar is talking about. When you hear about Bob Lazar talking about exhaust ports, this is it right here. Now they were grouped in 2 banks of 2, so there were 4 total, but there were 2 banks. So this might be the 2 banks that Bob Lazar had talked about. If he was closer, he may have noticed that there were actually 4, but they're banked in 2 groups. It has these outrigger pogo wheels, which is a very strange configuration. So it's kind of a tricycle landing gear. So you've got the 2 main gear, which are pogos, and then you've got the nose gear here, but then you've got these skids as well. This is a main skid under the center line of the aircraft. So this is front view. You can see both air brakes on the bottom and top were deployed. And then when they retract this for landing, or when they bring them out, it comes and it retracts into the center of the center line of the aircraft. The top surface here had a relief section for a Q bay. This could be for launching satellites or what's called rods from God, which is a depleted uranium round that has no explosive. Over here you see the stubby tail. Here's the red thermal protection areas. The bottom of the craft, according to the F-15 pilot, now this is something that Bob had never talked about because he didn't get to see the bottom of it. But if he did, if Bob Lazar could have confirmed space shuttle tiles and these relieved channels, would have been a done deal. Bob Lazar would have been confirmed to have been at Area 51 if he would have seen these details. I personally would believe Bob Lazar had been at Area 51 if he could identify three features, which are the key features on this. The aft exhaust ports with the vents, the space shuttle tiles on the bottom of the vehicle, and these channels or grooves that were believed to be about 12 inches square that were milled into this one-piece composite structure. If he saw those three, done deal. He would have been there. He would have seen it for sure. Here you can see the nose gear that retracts forward, the Q bay, and then as this was seen by the F-15 pilot, there was some kind of damage, so there was a tarp covering the stubby tail at the back end. He also stated, and this is something that Bob may have seen as well, there were these ports, circular ports on the back of this aircraft where you could load in a shotgun shell SRB, solid rocket booster, just like the space shuttle. So once this thing lands, what they do is to turn it around, they pull these shotgun shells out, they re-put in two SRBs, it gets brought back to Area 51, it gets loaded at the big hangar there into the bottom of the mothership, and then they go out for another mission. So here's the illustration that we put together. This is by Tom Bogan. This is what was seen at Holloman Air Force Base, February 1994, by the F-15 pilot. So here is the recovery operation. You've got the C5, you've got the clamshell doors opened up. There allegedly were two C5s built with these chipmunk cheek extensions. Not something that's known very much, but that gives you at least another 4 to 6 feet on either side to bring this in. Here is your Bob Lazar exhaust vents embedded within the exhaust ports of this vehicle right here. So this is the Blackstar Speedy or XOV experimental orbital vehicle. You can see the tarp covering the stubby tail, and then also the deployed air brakes on both the bottom and top of the aircraft with the shotgun shell ports there. Here's the large 11x17 of the same thing. Shows you the whole breakdown here. This must have been an incredible thing to see. This is the only really good report. Now there's other reports also landing at Edwards Air Force Base as well, but it was picked up at Kadena Air Force Base, and then within a 24-hour period it was flown back to Holloman Air Force Base. So we've got multiple reports as well. So I've got where it was seen, Kadena Air Force Base, picked up, flown back to Holloman Air Force Base. So here you can keep one of these for your records as well. I think I've got an extra Speedy. I may have, yep, take one of these for your records too.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's move on here.
So this will be our last folder.
Sure.
Because we're running out of cameras
Yep.
today.
So here's the layout. This is the brand new layout. It shows you the mothership SR3. So again, 200 feet in length, 120 foot wingspan. I've personally interviewed 3 people, 2 of them on tape, who have seen this aircraft in the real world. They've seen the actual aircraft. 120 foot wingspan. These winglets tip up at about a 30 to 35 degree angle at 16 feet. There's a center spine that runs along the center line of this aircraft on the top. These canards can go forward and aft for high speed or low speed flight. And there's according to the eyewitness, there's winglets on the canards as well as the terminating part of the main wing itself. Now this has a triangular air intake section, kind of like the XB-70. I've shown the parasitic aircraft kind of like below just so that you could see, but what it does, it fits up inside a relief section in the bottom of the aircraft, making it very aerodynamic efficient. So what they would do is to take you through a mission is this area, say like Donald Trump wants to see China or something, right? He'd pick up the phone, he'd call the Secretary of Defense, they'd do an emergency launch from Area 51. This thing would already be loaded up and ready to go. Pilot would already be set to go once the phone call comes in. They would taxi the mothership out to Area 51. They'd take off from Area 51. It uses 6 YJ-93 engines taken directly from the XB-70 program. I've got all the specs right here. Shows you the spans, shows you the propulsion system. They would take a magnetic 350-degree heading over Alaska, somewhere over northern Alaska at about 25,000 feet, about 1.6. They would airdrop the parasitic aircraft from the mothership. So there's an umbilical cord that would be detached at that time. And I know the name of the pilot too. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I know the name of the pilot who flew it. Anyway, it's another story. So once he's detached, he would pour the coals to it, and this thing can go up to 250,000 feet altitude at around Mach 12 to Mach 15, some estimates up to Mach 20, which is where your NAS program comes in.
And these would be in stages, that speed, that would be done in stages?
Well, he would be dropped at Mach 1.6, and then he would hit the linear aerospike engines, which is what Bob Lazar had seen, the back end of the linear aerospike engines, which was developed by Rocketdyne, the Aerojet Corporation. And then they would make it to Mach 20, which they could skip in and out of the upper reaches of the atmosphere, extending the range. So once they're over northern Russia, they'd be, maybe they're going at Mach 12 over northern Russia. Now it takes 3 states to turn. So you got to slow down, so he'd be throttling back, and then he'd make a left turn. Now they're going south, they're getting to the Middle East, so they're monitoring all the nuclear proliferation around the Middle East. They make a left-hand turn. They're over the southern China area there, the Asian area. Then they're heading toward Hawaii. Once they hit Hawaii, they make a left-hand turn, and then they're going into Area 51, all done in under 2 hours.
And how are they monitoring at that speed? They've got
sensors within the Q bay, and they can launch a satellite. But this, according to Bill Scott, is essentially the crux of the story, and this represents one of the aircraft within the secret space program that's paid for by American tax dollars, has no congressional oversight, no public scrutiny.
But the government knows about it.
Some people within the House and Armed Services Committee know about it. But again, this is 25 years ago. A lot of those people are no longer with us, so this story is essentially dead and buried. And this article that Bill had published was his kind of shot over the bow, and he was hoping that the story wouldn't disappear. That's why he published the story, because he was retiring, and he knew that if it wasn't up to him, the story would have completely disappeared.
Right.
And that's what he mentions this. Basically he's saying that rather than let this whole story die, he published the whole story, and it's explained in this article. So it has to go off to Bill Scott. But that is, in a nutshell, the Blackstar program.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've covered everything we can do in the short time that we've got right now. And Michael, I just want to say just thank you so much for your contribution and what you're doing for the field as well. It is so needed. Thank you so much.
No problem. Mm-hmm.